A grown man slapped a 10-year-old boy, mid-flight. What happened next silenced the entire plane. Some moments in life stick with you forever. For Jaylen Brooks, that moment began somewhere over Missouri, cruising at 34,000 feet inside a silver tube bound from Colorado Springs to Atlanta. It was his first time flying. 10 years old, wide-eyed, wearing a navy blue hoodie that read future astronaut across the chest, because that's what he dreamed of becoming one day. His small hands gripped the armrests tightly as the plane took off. Not out of fear, but that nervous excitement only kids know, the kind where everything feels enormous and new. Beside him sat his grandmother, Loretta Brooks. She insisted on wearing her Sunday church hat despite it bumping the overhead bin every few minutes. She had packed their snacks, a little bottle of lotion, and a couple of crossword puzzles neatly folded into her Bible, everything orderly, just like her. Loretta was the kind of woman who knew every gospel song by heart and never raised her voice unless she really meant business. They were flying to Georgia to visit Jaylen's aunt, Loretta's daughter, who had just welcomed her third baby. It was meant to be a joyful trip, a story to tell the cousins later. But things rarely go as planned. Jaylen had the window seat, his cheek almost pressed against the cold glass. Every now and then, he'd turn and point something out to Loretta, a cloud shaped like a dinosaur, a tiny town that looked like it was built out of Legos. 3 rows ahead, in seat 13A, sat Walter Granger. Late 50s, ruddy-faced, with short gray hair and a permanent scowl that made it clear he wasn't thrilled sharing airspace with strangers. He wore khaki pants and loafers, a crossword puzzle spread out on his tray table, not for fun, but to avoid eye contact. Walter had already grunted at the flight attendant when she didn't bring his ginger ale quickly enough. Jaylen didn't notice Walter at first. His mind was busy marveling at clouds that looked like cotton candy and wondering how to ask for peanuts without sounding scared. Loretta reached over, adjusting Jaylen's seatbelt, then tucked a tiny bottle of hand sanitizer into the seat pocket. "Just in case," she said with a wink. Jaylen smiled. He loved sitting next to Grandma. She made the world feel smaller, safer. But he still fidgeted, as kids do. He reached into his backpack for his headphones, and his elbow lightly tapped the back of Walter's seat. Just a small bump, the kind that happens dozens of times on crowded planes. Jaylen didn't even realize he'd done it. Walter did. He slowly turned his head, shooting a glare that froze Jaylen mid-fidget. "Sorry," Jaylen mumbled, confused. Walter said nothing and turned back, but Loretta's eyes narrowed slightly. For a few more minutes, peace held. The plane hummed as it sliced through the sky. But the calm wouldn't last. Something ugly was coming, and no one was ready. It happened fast. Jaylen was reaching again, this time to plug in his headphones. The jack was awkwardly buried between the seat cushion and the wall. His knee nudged the tray table, just a soft tap. Walter snapped, turning as if stabbed. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he barked, twisting in his seat. His voice cut through the engine drone, sharp and angry. Jaylen froze, eyes wide, hands in midair. I didn't mean to," he whispered. "Don't lie to me, boy," Walter snapped. "You kicked my damn seat twice. Sit still and act like you've been taught some manners." Loretta leaned forward, gripping the armrest between them. "Sir," she said firmly but controlled, "he's a child. He said he's sorry." "There's no need for that tone." Walter didn't even look at her. His gaze was locked on Jaylen. Then, no one on that plane saw it coming. Walter reached back, and slapped Jaylen across the face. The smack was sharp, flat, a sudden shock against skin. Jaylen jerked to the side, stunned. Loretta gasped. "Oh my God." Passengers in the rows ahead and behind snapped to attention. A woman across the aisle let out a shocked whisper, "Did he just?" Then silence, not the peaceful kind, but heavy, paralyzing silence, the kind that makes time slow to a crawl. Jaylen clutched his cheek, mouth opening, but no words came out. He wasn't crying. Not yet. His body stiffened, his brain trying to process what had just happened. Loretta's voice trembled, tight with disbelief and fury. "You put your hands on my grandson." Walter finally turned to face her. "Maybe if you taught him to keep his limbs to himself, I wouldn't have had to," he said casually, as if that made perfect sense. Loretta stood so quickly her knees bumped the seat in front of her. "You touch him again and I swear to God." Walter raised his hands mockingly. "Oh, here we go. Of course, playing the victim now. Typical." Two rows up, a man twisted around, eyes wide. A younger woman at the back fumbled with her phone, camera app already open. The atmosphere shifted. You could feel it, tight, confused, electric. Flight attendant Monica Reyes rushed over from the galley. Maybe 30, curls pinned beneath her navy cap. "Sir, what happened?" she asked. "He hit my grandson," Loretta snapped, voice fierce. "Right in front of me." Monica looked between Jaylen and Walter. Then back again. "Is that true, sir?" Walter leaned back and shrugged. "The kid was kicking me. He needed to be taught some respect." "He's 10, Loretta shouted. "You don't lay hands on a child. You don't put your hands on anybody." Jaylen still said nothing. Just stared at the seat in front of him, hands clenched in fists on his lap. Monica glanced around. Passengers whispered. Phones lifted. One man leaned over the aisle, eyes narrowed at Walter. The entire plane was watching. "Ma'am, sir, I need you both to remain calm," Monica said carefully. "Let's not escalate this." "Too late for that," Loretta hissed. Jaylen finally turned to his grandmother, voice shaky. "Grandma, I just wanted to plug in my headphones." She knelt beside him, brushing her thumb gently over his cheek. "I know, baby. I know." Monica pressed the intercom button to call the front. Before anyone could react, a calm, steady voice came from 4 rows back, and everything changed. "I saw the whole thing." Heads turned as a man in a charcoal blazer stood from seat 17C. Dr. Lionel Mercer. Mid-40s, clean-shaven, dark brown skin, slightly graying at the temples, the kind of man who spoke with intention. Not loud, not aggressive, just controlled, measured. "I watched it happen," he said, walking slowly up the aisle, steadying himself on the seat backs. "That man slapped the boy." He pointed directly at Walter. "I don't care what excuse he gives. What happened was assault." Walter laughed under his breath, shaking his head. "You weren't even close enough to see what you think you saw. The kid's been bouncing around like a damn ping-pong ball all flight." Lionel ignored him, turning to Monica. "I'm a trauma surgeon. I've seen worse than this. But make no mistake, what he did is illegal and dangerous. He struck a minor. No parent brushes that off. No grandparent should have to." Loretta looked up, eyes glassy with shock and gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly. Jaylen peeked from under his hoodie, eyes locked on the stranger. Lionel gave him a short nod, gentle but firm, a silent promise that he was not alone. Kevin whispered to Monica, "The pilot wants to know if this needs to be an emergency diversion." Monica nodded quickly, then turned to address the cabin, her voice calm but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we ask for your patience as we handle an incident on board. Please remain seated and keep calm." Walter scoffed loudly, leaning back in his seat, but the tension around him was growing. Passengers murmured, some pulling out their phones to record or make calls. Loretta stayed by Jaylen's side, her hand firm on his shoulder, grounding him through the chaos. Lionel remained standing, his presence steady. "Sir," he said, looking Walter directly in the eyes, "you could face serious consequences for this. Assaulting a child, especially in such a confined space, is a federal offense." Walter's face twisted with anger, but he knew the eyes of the whole plane were on him. He looked around, realizing his isolation. A few passengers gave Lionel approving nods, others shot Walter disapproving looks. Jaylen, still clutching his cheek, found courage in Lionel's calm demeanor. He whispered to Loretta, "Can we tell the pilot now? I don't want to fly with him." Loretta nodded, squeezing his hand. "We will, baby. We will." Monica made the call, her voice low but urgent. Moments later, the captain's voice came over the intercom, "This is your captain speaking. Due to an onboard disturbance, we are preparing to divert to Kansas City International Airport. We will keep you updated." A collective sigh of relief swept through the cabin. Walter slumped, defeated. The flight attendants moved to restrain him if necessary, but he stayed seated, grumbling under his breath. Lionel returned to his seat but kept a watchful eye on Walter. Meanwhile, Loretta comforted Jaylen, whispering, "You're safe now. You did nothing wrong." The plane began its descent, the hum of the engines now underscored by a palpable sense of justice and solidarity. The incident had shaken everyone, but it had also brought out a collective resolve to stand against injustice. Even at 34,000 feet. As the plane began its slow descent toward Kansas City, the atmosphere was heavy, not just with the hum of engines, but with an unspoken unity among the passengers. Whispers turned to quiet conversations, and eyes met with a shared understanding. This was more than a disruption. It was a moment that would not be forgotten. Jaylen sat close to Loretta, still holding his cheek where Walter's hand had struck him. He was silent, his young mind racing to process what had just happened. The pain was both physical and confusing. Why had a stranger hit him? Why had the man been so angry? Loretta brushed a stray curl from his forehead and spoke softly, "Jaylen, you're brave. And you're loved. Nothing he did changes that." Her voice was steady, but inside, her heart ached. She looked around at the faces of strangers, many now watching over her grandson as if he were their own. Lionel Mercer sat nearby, quietly talking to a woman who had witnessed the event. "It's not just about what happened," he said in his calm, measured tone. "It's about what we do next. How we respond when we see someone hurt and powerless. Jaylen's story shouldn't end here." Walter, meanwhile, was escorted by flight attendants toward the back of the plane. His face was flushed with a mix of embarrassment and anger, but there was nowhere left to hide. His outburst had exposed a deeper bitterness, a bitterness no one on this flight could fix, but justice had been served in the moment. The captain's voice came back over the intercom, "We will be on the ground shortly. Authorities will meet us to handle the situation. We thank you for your cooperation." Passengers prepared for landing. Phones were out, calls made, messages sent. Jaylen's story would reach beyond the cabin walls. Videos and photos would spread across social media, sparking conversations about respect, dignity, and the resilience of a 10-year-old boy who had endured more than any child should. As the wheels touched the runway, Jaylen looked out the window. The sky was vast, but he felt smaller somehow, or maybe stronger. Because even at 34,000 feet, surrounded by strangers, he was not alone. People had seen what happened. People had stood up for him. Loretta squeezed his hand again. "We're going to Georgia, baby. And when we get there, your aunt and cousins will know how brave you were." Jaylen smiled faintly, the fear still there but fading. "I just wanted to listen to my music," he whispered. "And you will," she said, "but first, we'll make sure everyone knows you don't deserve to be treated that way." As the plane taxied to a stop, the cabin fell into a quieter hush. The tension lingered, but now it was mixed with a cautious hope. Flight attendants moved through the aisles, reassuring passengers, while law enforcement officers boarded quickly, their faces serious and focused. Walter was gently but firmly led off the plane. The murmurs of disapproval followed him, a chorus of voices condemning his actions without needing to say a word. For the first time that day, Walter was not the center of control, he was under scrutiny. Monica knelt beside Jaylen, offering him a small pack of tissues. "You're very brave, Jaylen," she said softly. "Not many kids can keep their composure like you did." Jaylen blinked up at her, the shock still evident but slowly giving way to relief. "Thank you," he whispered. Loretta stood, steadying herself. "I want to make sure this doesn't happen to any other child," she said firmly. "No one should be hit for being a kid." Lionel nodded. "This moment will send a message. And with your permission, I'd like to share what happened with the local news when we land. It's important people hear your story." Loretta hesitated, then looked at Jaylen. His small nod was enough. Back on the ground, news crews gathered outside the terminal, alerted by social media buzz and official statements. The story of a 10-year-old boy slapped mid-flight was already trending, sparking outrage and calls for respect and kindness. Jaylen and Loretta, surrounded by a group of compassionate strangers, stepped onto the tarmac. Reporters asked questions, but Loretta's calm voice carried through. "What matters is that children everywhere feel safe, in the sky, on the ground, and everywhere in between." Jaylen smiled shyly at the cameras, still wearing his future astronaut hoodie, a symbol of hope and dreams beyond this painful moment. That day marked the beginning of a wider conversation, about dignity, about the power of standing up for what's right, and about the courage of a little boy who faced a harsh moment with quiet strength. In the days that followed, Jaylen's story spread far beyond the flight. Social media was flooded with messages of support, from parents, activists, even strangers moved by the courage of a boy who simply wanted to listen to music. News outlets interviewed Loretta and Lionel Mercer, who spoke passionately about the need to protect children and hold adults accountable for their actions. "This wasn't just an isolated incident," Lionel said. "It's a reminder of how important empathy and respect are, especially in moments of stress." Meanwhile, Jaylen's aunt in Georgia welcomed them with open arms, showering him with love and comfort. The family rallied around him, determined to turn this painful experience into a story of strength and hope. Jaylen, once just a wide-eyed kid dreaming of space, became a quiet symbol of resilience. His story reminded everyone that no matter how small you are, your dignity matters, and that standing up against injustice starts with each of us. As the weeks passed, Jaylen's story inspired many. Schools held discussions about kindness and respect. Airlines reviewed their policies on passenger conduct. And somewhere in Colorado Springs, a little boy still dreamed of the stars, now with a new sense of courage shining inside him. Because sometimes, the smallest voices make the loudest impact. And Jaylen Brooks? He wasn't just a passenger on that flight anymore. He became a beacon of hope. Proof that even in moments of darkness, strength and dignity can take flight. Thank you for listening. If you found this story meaningful, please share it. Together, we can stand up for kindness, respect, and the future of every child. As Jaylen looked up at the sky once more, his dreams felt bigger than ever. That flight was supposed to be just a trip, but it became a moment of courage, a moment that taught everyone watching that respect and kindness are never out of reach. If you've ever witnessed injustice or seen someone treated unfairly, remember Jaylen's quiet strength. Speak up. Stand tall. Because change begins when we refuse to stay silent. Thank you for sharing this story with me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to hear more stories that matter. Together, we can create a world where everyone's dignity is honored, one story at a time. As the plane touched down in Atlanta, the tension in the cabin began to ease, but the impact of what happened lingered in every heart on board. For Jaylen, the flight was no longer just a journey, it was a lesson in courage, resilience, and the power of standing up for what's right. Loretta held his hand tightly, whispering, "You were brave, baby. Always remember that." And Jaylen, with a quiet strength beyond his years, nodded, knowing that sometimes, even a small voice can echo louder than a shout. This story reminds us all, respect is not optional, and protecting the vulnerable is everyone's responsibility. When we choose kindness over anger, understanding over judgment, we build a better world for the next generation. Thank you for watching. If Jaylen's story touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Let's keep the conversation going, because every moment of empathy can change a life. And so, as Jaylen stepped off the plane, the journey ahead was not just the one he planned, it was a journey toward a future where courage and kindness rise above fear and anger. A future where every child's dignity is protected, and every act of injustice is met with standing up, speaking out, and standing together. Because sometimes, the smallest voices carry the greatest power. Thank you for joining me in sharing Jaylen's story. If it moved you, please like, comment, and share this video. Let's spread awareness, inspire empathy, and create a world where respect is a right, not a privilege. Until next time, stay compassionate, stay strong, and keep the thread of kindness alive.